Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. I am your host, Jessica Dewell of Red Direction. You are listening to Program 18, How Do You Admit You Need Help? Asking for help is a skill that I personally lacked for the first 37 years of my life. I knew how to create collaboration and I know how to say yes or no when asked, yet I never asked for help up until very recently. In my family of origin, it was modeled to me that adults have all the answers and no one ever needed help. They just got things done. So I came out of childhood and spent the next 20 years right after childhood being an adult and not knowing how to ask for help. And I felt like a failure when I did have to ask because at that point I was desperate. So even though I waited too long to ask, then I turn around and I put a pretty high bar on whoever I asked the help of. If it wasn't immediately an immediate response to help me when I needed it because I was already at the end of my rope and I was as far as I could go, I would physically break down. I would mentally shut down. I recoiled and I retreated, which kind of sucks if you think about it. So the good news is I can laugh. At the same point in time, this is a pretty serious issue because it went one step further emotionally. It went into resentment. I resented the people that I was asking for help because I wasn't able to receive the help they had to give me in their time and in their way. And then one day, with more love than I could ever imagine, a woman said to me, she said that I was limited in my success because I was not asking for help. And if I did everything that myself, there's only so much that I could actually ever accomplish. During that conversation, my heart opened more than a little bit. It became clear that I did have an upper limit problem. I had an upper limit problem of not being able to do it all. In actuality, I was taking that, even though I didn't think I was, and I know I'm good at collaboration and I know how to say yes or no, I was still modeling not asking for help to my teams. I was expecting them to be the same as me. Are you possibly doing the same to your teams? When we come back, we are going to ask the question and discuss how do you admit you need help.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Today with me to discuss this question is somebody very near and dear to my heart, ladies and gentlemen. And if you are listening, you have heard stories about my past and my childhood, but you've never actually heard me talk about anything about Theresa Robison. She is my baby sister. And she is a high school math teacher, and she has a team of teachers that report to her. And so when I was thinking about this question, you heard a lot of my backstory, and we'll hear a little bit more about that during the conversation. But learning that and talking about it and seeing it is something that as a working manager where we have jobs and responsibilities and we have outcomes, we also have to remember that what we do and how we act is what our teams take away. So how are we developing them through our own behaviors in addition to the things that we're telling them and encouraging them to do? All right, Joe. Oh, everybody, I'm going to interchange this and I'm going to try really hard to call her by her name that everybody knows her by, Theresa Robison.
You can call me Joe.
Okay. And everybody, I'm special that way. I must admit, I'm special that way. All right. So, Theresa, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do before I ask you the question of the day.
I am actually an academic lead teacher, which means I'm an instructional coach. I currently work at Kingwood Park High School in Kingwood, Texas. This is my 16th year in education. My undergraduate degree is a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics, and then I have a graduate degree in teacher leadership and mentoring/coaching, and then I also have a master's degree in upper level administration, which lets me be a principal if I wanted to be. My current team has 14 individuals. I have teachers who have been teaching since before I could walk, to teachers who This is their first dabble dip in the pond.
I think our families will probably come into this because what we model for our children is going to directly affect their ability as adults. And so just so you know, I use Carter all the time. I'm like, this is what I'm telling my 5-year-old, and here's how it translates a little bit into the work world, because while the age difference varies, some of the techniques and the approaches.
My existence at work is very different than my existence at home. I have two aspects to my job. There is the aspect where I am the employee and I have several bosses. I have the content principal, so there's an assistant principal who evaluates all of our teachers. He is one of my bosses. I have the associate principal and the head principal who run the ship, the whole school. They all provide me tasks, data analysis, program managing, budget issues. So I manage the department and report to them on that managerial front. On the other side, I am the manager in that it is my responsibility to steer my own ship, the math ship. So on any given day, you know, the teachers have to be here at 7 o'clock. So I have to be here and out in the hall, and I have to lay eyes on every single one of them at the start of the day, check their pulse, make sure they're in it to win it. Where are we emotionally? Why are you crying? It sounds funny, but it happens more often.
Yes.
You know, like, oh, your kid is sick. Should you be at home? Let me get you a substitute. Oh, what about this data? What? All your kids failed that test. Well, let's schedule a time because class starts in 10 minutes. So don't cry about it. It's okay. We're going to work it out. How about we meet such and such time? And so we have to kind of identify what their needs are at any given minute and keep them focused on the job at hand, and then make sure we follow up and get their needs met.
How do you admit that you need help, Theresa Robison?
When I am doing the 97 million things that are considered my personal job, there comes a point in time when the number of minutes in the day does not equal a successful completion of the task list. On most days, I am able to determine on my own what balls need to stay in the air the most, and using the life skill of prioritizing, I can determine what balls just get dropped for the day, and I'll pick them up the next day. So I do a lot of task shuffling and or task avoidance in order to keep all the balls up in the air for my job. There are times when everything is critical. I've got another set of bosses. They're at the district level. So there's a curriculum set of bosses and then an upper administrative set of bosses. The superintendents request things of us. Curriculum requests things. Our principals, like my job, reports directly to all of them. There are times that I get overwhelmed and I then make a list. I make a list. This is what you need me to do, Miss Lisa Draving. This is what they need me to do, and this is what they need me to do. And I schedule 30 seconds of her time, and I take my list in and I set it down and I say, I am beyond capacity. I need for you to prioritize this list for me. In your opinion, as my immediate direct supervisor, rank order the top 10 things that must get done today, because that's all that's happening today. And she'll look at my list and she'll laugh and she'll cross stuff off for me. And she's like, don't do that. Nah, I didn't really mean I needed that. And so she'll rank order it for me. And she's like, does that help you? And I'm like, yes, thank you. And I leave and then I focus on that list. Asking for help in that regard is a pretty simple task for me. The profession being what it is, even day one as a teacher in the classroom, your job is too much. There is never a day where a teacher leaves their job feeling like they're finished.
Hey, Carmen, welcome.
I am so sorry. I had an emergency client call and it lasted way too long. I'm so sorry.
We take care of those, Carmen, first. We are glad that you joined us when you could. You were just listening to the very end of the answer to our question today from Theresa Robison. She just answered the question, how do you admit you need help? I was also going to answer the question, do you feel like you're settled in enough? You want to jump in? Do you want me to answer? And then you answer? You tell me what would work for you.
Go ahead.
how do I ask and admit that I need help? First, I think I used the word admit on purpose because it was the admit part that I think I had the hardest. So when I'm listening to Sue Mackey, who is the woman I was talking about in the introduction, and she said, "You can't do it all. Why are you even trying?" And I was like, because I can. And then it was like, oh, I have to admit to myself that while I could learn everything, and while it made sense to maybe from a bootstrapping perspective, because every role I've always played has had a bootstrapping element. There's always been money, but there's never been enough money. I was like, oh, I just got to figure out how to do it because it comes down to me and there's nothing extra right now. The budget for now has been set. And so when I think about it and I think about the word admit, for me, it's, okay, I have to decide, and I switched it around. Instead of admit, I decide what makes sense for me to do and what makes sense for me to not do. And that comes down to my knowledge about the subject, my exposure to whatever the task or the skills that are necessary that need to be done. Because that way I can admit to myself, I can be clear as day that while I could learn it, it's going to take me X amount of time and my own personal time and resources, me and what I can get done in a day, versus going, I know what to look for. And I can say to myself, it would be better for me to get help here. Perfect example is I was like, okay, I want an email campaign to work in this certain way after this certain situation, and here are my objectives. I could sit down and I had basically all mapped out what I wanted. I didn't know how to say what needed to be said. And it turned out I went and I asked for help. Okay, I could do this better, or it could be done better for me. So I went and I said, I need your help. And I want to find out how to do this. And we had a conversation. I chose to outsource it, have a company do that for me. And I was like, oh, it was a huge weight off of my shoulders. So I really think the word admit isn't necessarily like, I'm going to admit to you guys that I need help. It's admitting to myself that I need help and deciding how I want to ask, which is actually a variation then of what Theresa does with her. She goes with a solution and she says, okay, tell me what's really the most important here. All right, Carmen, was that enough time for you?
This is an area that I really struggle with, and maybe I need help with that. It's not easy for me to do, and it's something that I've really had to work on. But I think, everybody has the battle scars of when they were interns or kind of low on the totem pole, and people kind of did give you a hard time when you asked for help and they felt like you didn't need it. And I think I don't know if it's a woman thing or just a thing, but I think everybody has felt that at some point in their career. Now, letting kind of go of that baggage is not always an easy thing to do. One of the things that I've tried, that I've really had to learn how to do, is to just find the right people that can kind of see through my chaos at times and learn kind of how to speak Carmen with me and saying, okay, this is what we need to get done and we're not there yet. So what is it that you need? So part of it is teaching the people around me to help me ask for help. That has definitely made a big difference. And that's been an issue with even the people that I choose to have working around me. You can't do that if that's just not in your personality to go to go to the owner of the business and say, here's what I needed from you and it didn't get done. What can I do? Then that's just not going to work well for me. And that means we're not going to accomplish our goal. So this is not the best place for you. I mean, I think that's my secret sauce, to recognize that it is a weakness of mine, and then to put people around me that can accommodate that.
So you are balancing your skills with the skills of others.
Right. I admit that is a weakness, and I do, and it's a constant thing of mine to work on getting better at that. I mean, but that's in my personal life. That's everywhere. My husband would say the exact same thing. Like, why didn't you ask me for help? And I'm like, because you can see me here with the laundry and the dishes and the.
Right. Hello.
Right. Like, why?
Is it always appropriate to ask? Or is it important to let somebody who we're watching and developing and working with fall down and have those mistakes so they can figure it out on their own, or be open to receiving pearls of wisdom is not the right thing I want to say, but like that, a little bit of insight of how they might change from us developing them, looking at them on the inside.
But you cannot provide help to a human who does not want it.
Right.
You cannot. And so when I walk through and I see someone who is rewriting something for the umpteenth time, and there's 4 other people on their team that could help them accomplish that task, and they absolutely positively refuse to let it go because, by God, the clip art and the font have to be the exact way, because if it's not, then, oh, holy hell, we're not going to be able to make it through the day because the dog is the wrong dog. Really? The main part of my job that I do out and about is grow the people. Like, I have to point out to them when their behavior is getting in their own way and when their choices are prohibiting them from successfully completing the job. You don't get to come and say, I don't have time to do my work, when 50% of the stuff that you do isn't necessarily needed to do your job. And so you can't just be like, hey, you're wasting 50% of every single day. But you ask questions and you guide them to, maybe you could let something go. Maybe you could ask your team for help. Maybe you could trust so-and-so to do it. Just maybe somebody could help you. I could help you.
Being able to recognize the strengths and weaknesses in somebody else is going to directly reflect how we communicate with that person. So being open to who we are first. And I was thinking, being open to who we are first is really important. Almost everything in the world is my favorite. Because in that moment, when I'm working on something or listening to a song or watching a movie or having a conversation with somebody or thinking about an idea, I'm like all in. And so I had to look back a little bit to my concept of I'm really good with collaboration. But you want to know something? When I asked Theresa to come onto the show, and Carmen, when I first reached out to you, I had pit stains already from writing that email on LinkedIn and hitting that send button, because all I have to do is ask and people are going to go, yes, they like it, or no, they don't. And I'm wondering if part of my avoidance of asking for help is actually related to, will they like it as much as I do? Will they want to do this as much as me? And so having
just accept it. Nobody is ever going to like everything as much as you.
I know.
Just know that now. Don't sweat about it. Just accept it.
Well, but it's one of those, it's one of those things that I was like, well, and that's also a part of admitting that I need help is twofold. One, it might be help getting a job done, but it also might be opening the door to collaboration. And it's almost like some people fear the sales process and having client conversations and following up and closing a sale, or Theresa, in your case, a parent-teacher conference, or in Carmen's case, a difficult conversation with the owner of a business that she's working with. It's kind of like, and the same is true for me. It's like, well, okay, I need to be able to open up an idea, but I also don't want to be seen at a disadvantage because I am knowledgeable in what I'm doing. And here's where I'm knowledgeable at, and being very strong in that. So the areas that aren't as strong, my weaknesses or my team's weaknesses, can be facilitated in another way. And we can have a connection at a deeper level that way and actually hit the send button.
Fear of rejection gets in the way of a lot of things. I know you were talking about sales. I would tell people that I used to hate sales. Mm-hmm. Like I did not like doing it. And, and even though I've had jobs in the past that I did well at, that sales was a central part of, I did not like doing it. Even if they gave me a hit list and I know exactly who my customers were, I did not like doing that. Get the phone call. Hi, we need to talk. Can we set a meeting? No, this day doesn't work for you. Okay, what day works for you? I just hated that. Until I started doing it for myself, for my own business. And now, because I'm doing it with something that I'm passionate about, it's much more fun. I enjoy it a lot more than I used to. It's still not my favorite thing, but I enjoy it a lot more. But I think, fear of rejection is a big reason why, and maybe it's a woman thing again too, we don't often ask for help. I often see it you know, because a lot of what I do is help people fix websites that are not meeting their marketing goals. That's the place where I wish people would ask for more help.
Right.
By the time I get involved, usually it's a hot mess.
Exactly. And because they've decided to bootstrap it against their own best interest.
And then they swear off the idea of investing in digital marketing because they'll say, well, I spent time building this website, and even though on the front side it might look decent, on the back side, the coding and you've got way too many plugins and all of this other stuff going on that's creating such a digital mess that the business owner can't see, that they end up swearing off ever investing in digital marketing again. And I'm like, you're just digging your own grave, so to speak.
Yes, they should have called and asked for help, but they've got to have somebody, you know, like you, who knows, like, I don't know anything about websites, but I would call for help immediately because I'd be like, I can't even make it work.
There's so much information out there that people think that they can Google it or watch a YouTube video about it, and that's all the help they need, rather than asking somebody that can literally walk them through it. And I know that's not the purpose of the show, so I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much. But you know, it's a situation that I think it's a mindset issue. It's really not a technical thing, but it's a mindset of, I don't want to invest in this. I need to keep all of my money. And so I won't, you know, but there's so many YouTube videos. YouTube can teach me anything. And there's all these studies of people in foreign countries that built trillion-dollar businesses based on stuff they saw on YouTube. And so for that reason, they think that they can go and YouTube how to get, you know, better search engine ranking. And then they end up doing something that gets them blocked from Google forever.
Yes, everybody, this is Carmen's favorite thing. If you couldn't tell, I'm just going to make sure it's clear because she is the go-to person, and she makes okay. And you bring up a really good point, because what is the first thing that we do when we need help? You said it, Carmen. We go Google it. We do not talk to another human. In this case, there might be some gender things. It kind of goes back to the old adage of who's going to stop and ask for the directions, and who reads the instructions on how to build the thing you bring home from the store or take to your office. I think there's an element of that too, that we want to Google it. We don't want to let anybody know that we don't know. So we all have jobs, all three of us. We all have our jobs. And sometimes I need something extra done, or I need a third hand to open a door, or something like that. So I will ask Carter and interrupt whatever he is doing, or Ryan and interrupt whatever he's doing, mostly because, one, I need help, and two, there happens to be an opportune time to let Carter see, my hands are full, and what am I going to do? I could put it down, but then if I go open the refrigerator, I still have to go back and get the thing to go in the refrigerator, and the refrigerator is going to close. So this is some general problem solving of, I need help because I literally need a third hand right now, and being able to witness that and see that, I can do that with confidence. That's no problem. Then I turn around and I'm at work and I'm like, okay, I receive input and feedback and reports from my team. I get told a lot what I should be doing. And I'm like, and I have a couple of responses to that. So I'm like, I hear what you're saying for what I should be doing. The key word here, should. So let me prioritize this. I require your help getting this done. This is something that I'm glad to provide input. This is not something I will do the work for. And I do that with my team. And then as far as like a client goes, I ask a lot of questions by nature, and it's not necessarily to ask for help. But if there's a difficult conversation that I have to have, or an uncomfortable one, a lot of what I do deals with elephants in the room. And so tactfully or not, elephants are elephants in the room. And so in asking a lot of questions, I will try and draw out a conversation to open the door to allow a better understanding of me figuring out what help I can provide, and me figuring out what help I need from this business team to be able to help me help them. And so I might not use the words, I need your help in this situation with a client, but the whole purpose of what I'm doing is to figure out where are their strengths and where are mine, and how are we going to make this work, going back to that collaborative effort. So I'd love to hear from you guys what your thoughts are on each of those situations and how you model asking for help, or use the concept of asking for help to get things done.
For me at home, I'm terrible at modeling it. I don't ask, and that's definitely something that we're working on as as a family and getting better at that. And not to like have a confessional, but it does kind of create some internal resentment. So when you don't ask for help, then you become resentful of people who didn't help you. And when you think in your head, it's so clear that I need help. So when I would come home and kids are everywhere and there's the dogs and the phone is ringing and food is cooking and someone knocks on the door and it's just like, okay, dear, do you not see this chaos? And literally the kids or whatever have kind of tuned out and they're into their own thing. And so because mom always did it, they're not aware of it. They're just kind of oblivious to it. I think definitely that's a weakness area that I try to work on. And it's funny because I'll then fuss at my kids when they drop something and I'm like, well, why were you trying to carry all of that? And why didn't you ask for help? Or why are you climbing on the counter to get a glass? Why didn't you ask for help? It kind of smacks you in the face and they're like, because I never see you ask for help.
Exactly.
I do think that definitely is something kind of, like I said, as a confessional on a parenting scenario that I have to get better at.
Our home life is the perfect place to practice our skills because we're already vulnerable there. Everybody already knows what our warts are. It's great to try things out, to build our confidence there if we really have this concept of an inability to do something and we don't want to ask somebody professionally or, whether it's an employer or employee or an employer a contractor or a client. So I hear you and I'm totally with you. And I think it's awesome you're working on it.
Professionally, modeling it for my team, I think I probably do, at least I hope I do, a better job of that. So I think we've done a lot of things outside of the office and just as a team that has nothing to do with what we do, that just helps us get to know each other better so that we feel more comfortable asking for help and being able to recognize kind of those stress signals in the team around me. So that even if I'm not asking for help, if you notice that that's my third cup of coffee today, that's not a good sign. If you notice I'm emailing you in all caps or, even if I don't say it, that's usually a sign that there's something going on. And so we try to do that and make sure that those barriers and silos and whatnot are not there so that we feel comfortable asking each other for help. And again, as kind of the leader, modeling that and giving them good examples of how do you ask for help. So it's not drop what you're doing and help me come put out this fire, because I'm not going to be too receptive to that because my initial response is going to be, well, how did you start this fire in the first place? There's a way to do it. And so I think modeling that way is important in a leadership role.
All right, Theresa.
At home, I grew up with you.
Just so you know, Carmen, Theresa is my little baby sister. I also said that in earlier.
Aww.
Yeah, she came to join us on this one because I thought as a teacher and having bosses above her and having people below her, she would be good to talk about this modeling piece.
Jessica, I became a single mom and my children were 18 months old and 2. Mm-hmm. And I just honed in on my superwoman powers where everything will get done no matter what. So the house was spotless, the kids were taken care of, they were clean, the dishes were always done, the laundry was done and put away. It meant no sleep for me. It meant home-cooked meals, home-cooked lunches, home-cooked breakfast. Please. And no life for this lady right here. As the kids got bigger, I began talking with you and reflecting about what's realistic and what's not realistic, and, medical problems from no sleep and no food for the mother. And, okay, well, maybe this is important. And so by the time Samantha, my oldest, was 5 or 6, I had gotten to the point where it wasn't always, yes, of course, sweet child, I will do everything you possibly want. When they ask me for things now, we have a conversation as a family about the realisticness of the request. And sometimes that results in yes, and sometimes it results in we'll work on it if we can, and sometimes it results in absolutely not. We already have 4 things scheduled for this day after school, and that doesn't even include homework, and I'm not staying up at night to make you a toilet paper snowman. It's not happening. So, just as an example. And so I know, right? Maybe something that's on the schedule is less important. And so we talk about how we determine where mommy's time is going to go. And then I make a point to say, I cannot do everything. I mean, that was something that was never uttered in my home growing up. You know, Jessica, if you said it and it needed or wanted to be done, I don't know when our mother ever slept, but she didn't. She couldn't have. There was no way. And so it's unrealistic. And I try to tell my children, I'm at my limit. I can't, or I can, but you're going to have to help in this way, and this way, or mommy's not feeling well and I need your help. And so I have purposefully shifted gears at home to make it more of a democracy in regard to everybody has to chip in or nothing's going to happen. The other thing at home, you both have talked about, you know, if someone sees you stressed out, then. And so we focus at home on empathy and sympathy. And so if it's clear that someone in the house is beyond capacity, we have a discussion about our behavior. So if the boy is having a day and the girl is purposefully poking at him, you know, we stop and we say, how do we know the boy is at capacity? What things is he showing us? Shouldn't we then in turn want to help him? Or at least not make his day worse? Like, no, she doesn't always want to help him. Okay, great. There's siblings, that's fine. But you still have ownership in the fact that you shouldn't be purposefully making somebody's day worse. And I feel like that is going to be beneficial to them in the workplace, because it's kind of teaching them to pay attention to other people first versus just going on their own premise. Mm-hmm. At work, we do team building stuff. We've done ropes courses. We do the colors analysis where you figure out your personalities. Every couple years, we pull one thing out because to figure out how different groups of people communicate helps them be aware and cognizant of the fact that just because someone communicates differently doesn't mean that what you're working on is less important to them. They're just going to communicate it differently. One of the things, I took a leadership class a few years ago, and the thing that she said that was my biggest takeaway was, as a leader in the workplace, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? And so there are days when someone has lit a fire and cuss words out of control everywhere, and the question is, do you put the fire out or do we focus on things that should have happened? And so our commodity here is human beings. Mm-hmm. And so in the commodity of the human being, fire outing is most important. Reflective conversation after, I'm not doing my job if after everything has settled down, I don't call for reflection and I don't, lead a discussion about, okay, now that we're all in a place, how did we get there? What are we going to do differently? Whatever. When again, you've got a little human being who is hanging in the balance, the fire goes out first. And sometimes that's frustrating as a leader because I agree. Why? Why are we here again? And why can't you solve your own problems? Like we just did this a month ago with a different child. How is it you haven't learned? Take a deep breath, Theresa. We're going to just go through it one more time. Mm-hmm. And we're going to try again.
Repetition matters. And I think, and that's also in asking for help. So summing up all of the conversation that we've had so far, really, I think we're talking about repetition. We're talking about this muscle of modeling and a muscle of asking for help. And what does asking for help mean in different situations? Because asking for help is not always the same. Needing a cup of sugar from the neighbor is very different than needing somebody to go pick up a sick child from work because you're at a client call, which is very different from absenteeism problems at the office, which is very different from products not getting delivered or services not being delivered on time and on budget. So how we would ask for help and approach those different situations. And where do we go first? We go to somebody that we don't have to actually ask first, that is not a human. Google. I was writing down a ton of ideas for blog posts and future shows. So ladies, be prepared because I'll probably ask you back. It's so important what we're talking about in terms of identifying our own needs and identifying our own reactions to ourselves and how we react to somebody else when they ask us for help, even if it's not in the way that we're able to receive it. How do we then move forward and be a good model as well as build our own skill? This is the Voice of Bold Business Radio, and you are going to find the program notes for Program 18, How Do You Admit You Need Help, on the website, and it's thevoiceofboldbusiness.com/p18. I want to know your stories and your experiences about asking for help, about how you overcame any issues, or if you're still struggling with the problem of asking for help, because being able to ask for help and being able to model how to ask for help and how to communicate effectively with each other is what makes us leaders today. So remove your upper limit by placing the attention on the skills that you wish to improve, which may include this one, asking for help. And remember, you probably do, just like me, because I'm holding up the mirror, need practice on asking for help in certain situations. Go do that. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.